One of the big drawbacks of being a federal MP is that you've got to go 2 weeks at a time for half the year to Canberra for parliamentary sittings. For the Victorian MPs this time around, they're having to go to Canberra for 2 weeks to go into isolation before their 2 weeks of parliamentary sittings. One of those is the Liberal member for Goldstein, Tim Wilson. Thanks for joining us, Tim. How you keeping busy in isolation? No quarantine breaches in the nation's capital?
No, none at all. Well, not on my watch anyway. No, very busy actually, because the reality is you've got a full day of job to do remotely as an MP anyway. So basically by about 6 o'clock when you get done with the day, by the time you make dinner, you're pretty much done.
All right, so when Parliament resumes, I would be very surprised if we didn't see a very intense scrutiny on the aged care sector. It's accounted for something over 2/3 of the deaths in this. In many respects, when it comes to fatalities, this is an aged care crisis rather than a broader one in the community. Has the federal government dropped the ball on this issue?
Well, I don't agree with that characterisation, least because we've already called the Aged Care Royal Commission to look into the systemic issues in aged care to address them as in part of a policy response. What COVID-19 has done is brought those absolutely to the fore, not just of the sector, not just of the government, but obviously of public attention as well. Now, I don't think we should go get into a slang match against various providers. I think, and I genuinely believe that aged care providers are doing the best they can in the circumstances. But when you've got older Australians, often with lower immune systems, etc., these are always going to be, aged care homes are always going to be incubators, not just in Australia, but around the world, as the right environment for COVID-19 to spread and sadly cause serious health concerns in some cases fatality.
We've got to take that as a given. We've always got to make that point that, of course, it's very difficult to keep the disease out of an aged care home if it's in the community. But my frustration is that on this program, we've been talking since early March at the latest about how there needed to be a focus on the aged care facilities. And yet, just now, just in the last couple of weeks and even today, we're seeing rules brought in where carers have to use face masks, where they can't go from one centre to another, where there'll be a rule that if anyone's infected, they go to hospital. We should have had these protocols in place, surely no later than March.
Well, we actually issued the federal government issued guidelines in March precisely along these lines to enable both carers and nurses as well as providers take responsibilities. Obviously, the situation now has escalated to a point where further directions have to be provided. And you know, the reality is everybody is making this up as they go along or addressing the situations as they come along with regard to COVID-19 prevention, because it is a new virus, and what we've found is it inflicts in so much harm in often ways we hadn't previously thought about. I've spoken to the aged care providers within my electorate, and I spoke to one of them who said, you know, the reality is we've kept it out predominantly for luck reasons and luck reasons alone. And those who haven't have had bad luck, but obviously there's a very human toll behind that bad luck.
Now, we know the political difficulties Daniel Andrews is in, a lot of focus on mistakes he's made in the past. Incredibly, today there are reports that maybe the Liberal opposition leader in Victoria, Michael O'Brien, could be under threat. Have you heard anything about this within Liberal Party ranks?
No, I haven't heard that at all within Liberal Party ranks. I don't think anyone's focused on anything other than keeping Daniel Andrews to account. Obviously, there is an election within 2.5 years' time, but frankly, I think most people's focus is actually on the present and the now, just like Australians are concerned about their health and welfare. Members of Parliament, like me, are very worried about our state and our country, because it's not just human consequences, but also the economic consequences that will flow very clearly from this virus for many years to come.
Well, I think this is the point, whether it's Scott Morrison or Daniel Andrews or the other premiers, focusing on the blame game is not about political scalps. It's about learning what we can to make sure we're doing everything we can to confront what is a diabolical problem.
I think that's 100% right, and people sort of say that it's not a time for accountability now or not time to ask questions now. I've got to say I completely disagree. And it's not because anyone's engaged in a political slinging match. It's because there needs to be accountability and there needs to be an awareness of what has failed us, so that in the case of Victoria, where clearly the biggest outbreak has occurred, it isn't repeated nationwide. And, of course, if there are things we can learn from Victoria, we should. Now, that doesn't negate that there may be more severe accountability taken in time, but we're in the middle of a crisis, a health crisis, and we have to learn from it to stop it spreading.
One last question, Tim Wilson. You don't really wear a suit in isolation, do you?
No, but I did it for you and your viewers. If you want to follow my Instagram account, Tim Wilson MP, you'll find the lighter side of quarantine, but most of the time I'm dressed in a polo, but
PJs.
sometimes a little respectable.
Thanks
no, it's better than that. It's better than that.
Better than that. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Tim Wilson.